Melissa.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, friends.
Good
Look at all
morning.
those lovely faces.
Mhm.
Well, this is going to be fun. I'm not going to stay for the whole thing today because I did not get my supplies in time. And so I'm just going to hover around and watch everybody else start working and hopefully learn a little bit before I run. Of course, the second that I took this off the calendar filled with 85 other things. So
As it does.
yeah. There are things that have to get done. We got to go buy the compost and the fertilizer and stuff to put the garden to bed and cover it with cardboard for the winter. And so that's what today has turned into, hence the overalls.
I love it.
Okay. Well, Melissa, do you want to kick it off and introduce Leana to everyone, and then we'll get started?
Yeah, is our calendar up on the site yet?
The event calendar?
No,
Oh, yes.
our calendar.
Yes, our
Okay.
calendar is up on the site. It's live. Absolutely.
Sure. Okay. So everybody, I'm so glad you're here today. This is going to be really fun. I wish I could stick around for the whole of it and learn how to actually paint something that's not by numbers. But Timmy and I are gonna be farmers today.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Hi.
And so I'm going to hand it off to Leanna in a moment, but first I want to tell you, first of all, I'm so madly in love with Leanne's work. It's just stunning, and I hope you guys have a great time. I know she's going to be able to guide you into creating these beautiful things for your tabletops and beyond, I'm sure. And also, if you want to see some of her work, we do have some of her items for sale, and she did our calendar for 2023, and there's lots of little Easter eggs in that calendar too, if you look. She really took notes of things that are kind of I'm trying not to give away too much because I want you to look for the Easter eggs, but things that would be, I don't know, things that I like, things that I experience, things that, that modern prairie, our aesthetic that we love. So see if you can find the Easter eggs in the calendar. It's pretty fun. Especially November. I think if you look at the calendar and you look at the image that Leanne created for November, you'll see there's a lot of my life in there. So enjoy. And I'm going to stop yammering and turn it over to the extraordinary artist who's going to teach you and hopefully me someday how to do this.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Melissa. I am just thrilled to be here with your community. Oh man, I just love seeing you all in your homes. And thank you for coming out this Saturday morning before Thanksgiving for this little workshop. My name, as Melissa said, is Leana Fischer, and teaching watercolor is one of my favorite things in the world. I know watercolor has a reputation for being a little bit challenging, but I think you're going to be surprised today at what you learn and what you're able to do with a few simple techniques. So if you want to make sure that you see this image with my hands in it, you can hover your mouse or your finger over that image, and there's a little box with 3 dots in it. And if you click that, you should be able to pin that screen. So it should stay on that as we go. But Nicole, the lovely Nicole, she will be managing the chat. So if you have questions as we go, please feel free to type those in, and Nicole will let me know, and I can cover absolutely anything you have questions about. Sound good? All right, so I am going to quickly go over our supplies, and then we're going to jump right into it because we have a lot to cover today. And so I am using very, very simple watercolor paper. I got this at Hobby Lobby, nothing fancy. But it is watercolor paper. I've got a little pan set here with some about 12 colors. And I'm going to be using 2 brushes today, a number 6 and a number 2. It doesn't really matter what size you have, just as long as it's a round brush, and that means it's going to come to a nice point like that. There's so much you can do with a round brush, and that's all we're going to need today. You might also notice I do have 2 cups of water handy, but this is optional. One is for rinsing your brush to get the dirty paint off, and one is to get fresh water. But if you need to get up and refresh your water, please, of course, feel free to do that anytime. Okay, I have already painted a few examples of some of the things we're going to work on today. But as you know, we are focusing today on autumn motifs for place cards. But what we're going to cover can also be used on note cards, gift tags, lots and lots of different things. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. And the first thing we're going to do is just prepare our palette. Now with watercolor, what you need to do to get it started is add water and mix the water into the paint. So what I'm doing is getting water on my brush and getting that brush nice and wet, swirling it around in the water. And then I'm going to bring drops of water over to my palette, creating a little puddle on the top of that paint. And just a nice layer of water there should be perfect. And then I'm just going to swirl that water into the paint so it gets really nice and liquidy. That's what we want. It takes a minute, so take your time. The goal here is that the paint is not sticky feeling. You want it to be smooth and not too thick. So go ahead and keep swirling. And we're going to do a quick little test to make sure that your paint consistency is looking good. So once you have mixed that first paint color up, go ahead and swirl your brush around in it and wipe it off a couple times. And what you're going to do is simply draw a line that goes from the top of your paper down to the bottom. And if you have enough paint mixed in with your water, or I should say enough water mixed in with your paint, you should be able to take that line from the top all the way to the bottom without it getting scratchy or dry. So if it's a nice smooth line all the way down, then you have the right consistency of water to paint. I'm going to lower my camera a little bit because I know it can be a little hard to see things. So we're going to go down just a little bit here. Okay. Yeah, if at any time you need to see something again, just hop into the chat and let Nicole know. Okay, so if your paint did get a little bit scratchy there at the bottom, that just means you need to add more water to it. But if you got a nice even line, the next thing we're going to do is try drawing lines at different thicknesses. So the first one we're going to do is a thick line. And the wonderful thing about a round brush like this is how versatile it is. You can go pretty thick and very thin just with this one brush. So the key with a thick line is to load up your brush really, really well. We want this to have lots of paint and water all in it. And so I'm not even going to wipe the brush off this time. I'm going to take it right from my paint to my paper, and I'm going to press down on my brush and look at how wide of a line I can get. Now, the thing is, with a very thick line, the harder you press, the more paint is going to be squeezed out of the brush. And so what will probably happen on this one is that it will get a little scratchy. Yeah, that's okay. That's it just can't carry quite as far because of how big our brush is. Now, what you can always do is get a bigger brush, and that will travel a lot farther for you. But for this little number 6, that's about how far we can go. All right, now we're going to go to the other extreme. We're going to try to do a really thin line. So go ahead and get that brush nice and loaded up again. But this time, I want you to wipe your brush on the edge of your palette quite a few times until you come to a nice point on the tip of your brush. And with a thin line, here are a few tips. One is to keep your like pinky or palm resting on the paper. And another is to hold your brush at a higher angle to the paper. So that will allow just the tip of your brush to paint. And now you can just go as thin as you can go here, using the tip of that brush going all the way down. So look at the difference between these two lines, just with this one brush. Now I'm going to put you to the test. Let's see if we can go even thinner with this line. Okay, so now I'm not getting more paint. I'm actually going to just keep wiping that brush a little bit more. We'll see if this works. Sometimes I can go thinner and sometimes I can't, but let's see. We're going to go just one more, even thinner, if we can. Okay, I think I did get a little thinner there. So what I want you to start to understand is that the amount of water and paint in your brush really affects the type of line you're able to create with that brush. So we're going to be talking a lot about how much to wipe off the brush, to squeeze out paint, to achieve the effect that we're going for with our leaves and other things. Okay, now the next thing we're going to practice is one of my favorite techniques in the world. And this is creating a leaf with a very simple stroke. Okay, so it's essentially a line that we're going to be making. We're just going to be changing the pressure of our stroke as we create that line, and it's going to transform into a leaf. So this takes a little bit of practice, but we're going to spend some time on this. So don't worry if you don't get it right away. Let's stick with our color that we've already mixed up. For me, that's green. And swirl that brush in your paint, get it nice and full. And once you've done that, I want you to wipe that brush off maybe like 4 or 5 times. So this is kind of like in between the thick line and the thin line, how much moisture. Okay, now I'm gonna show you this here, and then I'm gonna try to hold it up even closer to show you. And then we're gonna take some time to practice. All right, so this little leaf, what you're gonna do is start by touching the tip of your brush to your paper, and then pressing your brush down so that the fibers spread out. And then as you continue pulling your stroke down, you're going to lift up and take your brush off of the paper. There's your leaf. And then you can just do a nice thin line down from it. Okay, I'm going to show you that closer because I know it's a little hard to see. Okay. So what I'm doing here is a very light touch with the tip of my brush, press down and see how much those fibers spread out. And now I'm lifting as I pull down. And then I can create a tiny little stem with the tip of my brush. Okay. So I'm going to just keep doing a few of these down this main stem, and do chime in if you have any questions. I'll continue to talk through it a little bit because there are a few common things that tend to happen when you're learning this for the first time. Okay, so one is you start and you press, but then if you lift up really quickly, you get kind of an uneven edge there at the bottom. So what you want to make sure you do is follow through all the way. So I'm pulling that brush the whole time, even as I lift up at the bottom. And you don't want to go too fast. It's a nice controlled stroke. And another thing is if you don't wipe your brush off enough, it is really hard to get a pointy edge at the top of your leaf. So if you're struggling to get that nice pointy edge, try wiping your brush off a little bit more. Sometimes that helps too. Melissa, thanks so much for coming. It was wonderful to see you.
Great to see you too. I've got to run, but everybody have a great time. I've just typed a message to you. I'm so envious that you all are learning to do this. I want to do this so badly, but now I have to go put my hands in dirt. So
well, that sounds fun too.
you guys enjoy. And if I don't see you before, if you don't join us for pie on Monday, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I'm sending you all lots of love.
Thanks, Melissa. Happy Thanksgiving to you too.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Okay, guys. Well, how's it going? Are we starting to get the hang of this a little bit? It takes some practice. And I know I'm probably making this look easy. It's like anything where it looks easy if you've done it a lot. But I think you'll be surprised once you just keep going a little bit. I think you're really going to start to get it. So we're going to practice this one for just another minute or two. And then I'll show you some variations that you can do on this leaf to make a whole nother variety of leaves.
Leana, there's a question from Lisa. I'm not quite sure. It says, are you reloading?
Oh, reloading?
Reloading.
Is that what you mean, Lisa? Reloading the brush.
Yes.
Yes.
Are you reloading with each leaf?
Thank you, Lisa. That's a great question. It's sort of not every leaf necessarily, but at the most it's every other, or at the least it's like every other leaf. Yeah. So what I'll do is, I'll do one. Usually I can get one more out of it, but it will start to get dry on me on that second one, and then I'll reload the brush. Yeah, great question. Yeah, you kind of learn the feel of it after a while, but there are a few variables like how big your brush is and how much paint you had in it to start with, but yeah, usually about every 2 leaves. Okay, so you can keep going as I talk here. But the next variation I want to show you on this is doing a very similar stroke, just a little bit smaller. Now I'm going to show you this using the same brush here, but you can do the same thing using a smaller brush, which I'll show you in a moment. So the difference for this leaf is we're going to wipe our brush off a little bit more because we're going smaller. So I'm getting that paint loaded up and wiping it off now a little bit more like as if I were doing a thin line like we practiced. So for this one, I'm actually going to draw the stem first, nice and thin. And now I can do little mini strokes. So I'm still touching at the tip, pressing down and pulling up, but I'm just not pressing quite as hard. So let me lift up this paper again and we'll see if you can see it a little better. So this one is a light touch press. It's like a little baby press, almost just as if you're stamping the brush onto the paper. And this is really fun for little sprigs of things like herbs or grass, things like that, even ferns. So anything that has a small repetitive leaf, you can do this way. So I'll do some that kind of go on this side, and then I can just rotate my paper and keep going on the other side. And you can create really sweet little things with that technique as well. So it's pretty much the same. It's just a slight modification. So if I were making a fern, for example, what I could do is now draw other leaves that come off of this main stem and create each little leaf of the fern. I don't know what to call that. It's almost like they're individual leaves on one main leaf, kind of. I am clearly not a biologist. But
Leanna, we also have another question from Carrie. What do you think could be
okay.
happening if I'm getting a leaf that's flatter on one side than the other?
Oh, hey, Carrie, would you be comfortable with holding it up for me to see? If not, that's okay. I can try to diagnose it as well. What might be happening is, let's see, it might be a matter of the way you're holding your brush, like at the angle you're holding it. Okay. Oh, perfect. Ah, yes. Okay. So honestly, I think those look really good, but what might be happening is it might be a way that you're like moving the brush. Try holding it at an even, almost like parallel to the paper, and pressing that way. Sometimes if you like twist your hand a little bit, it can cause the brush to warp and rotate a little bit. That would be my guess as to what's happening. And what you might try is actually rotating your paper so you can always do the same stroke with your hand rather than trying to like rotate your wrist. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, good. I hope that helps.
It does.
Great. Yeah, I move my paper around like all different ways as I work because it's more important that your hand does the same thing and the paper can move to your hand. I'm glad you brought that up, Carrie. Okay. All right, there's one more I want to show you, and this won't necessarily apply to our place cards today, but I just want you to see what's possible with this stroke so that you can use it for more things later on. So the last thing I'll show you with this little leaf is that you can actually create a very large leaf with this technique as well. So now we're thinking about our wide line that we did at the beginning. So we're going to load our brush up pretty heavily here. We're only going to wipe it like maybe twice, okay? So with this really big line, what we're going to do is the same idea, touching the paper gently, pressing down, and then pulling all the way to our stem. And what might happen, it might get a little scratchy on you. And I'm noticing that sometimes as we work, our paint, you know, it naturally starts to dry a little bit. So you might need to even add a little more water to your paint to do this one. But the nice thing with this is you can create really nice sweeping leaves, almost like bamboo or something like that with this stroke. And then you can combine that with your thin stem to create some really lovely combinations. So again, it's a light touch, pressing, and it's just really pulling longer until you meet that stem. And so anyway, this technique is just one of my favorites because there's so much you can do with it. So go ahead and maybe do a couple more practice ones, and we're going to switch gears a little bit into creating a palette for our autumn place cards. So come to a good stopping point and rinse off your brush. We're going to take a few minutes here to talk about how we can mix color to make them feel a little more neutral for autumn. Because if your set is anything like mine, these are really lovely colors, but they're not very autumny. That's not a word, but you know, they're very vibrant. So I want to show you how we can combine coordinating colors to make them a little more neutral. So today we're going to make an autumn purple, yellow, and green. Okay. So this is going to take a few minutes, but we can just work through this here. What we're going to need to do first is prepare the different colors for mixing. So what we're going to use is a yellow, a purple, an orange, and a brown. So that's yellow, purple, orange, brown. You've already got your green, so that's perfect. So do just like you did at the beginning, which is to create little puddles on top of your water, on top of your paint with water. And you'll do that for each of the different colors first. Oh, I noticed Sue has a spray bottle. That's great. That's a really fun tip. If you have a spray bottle, that makes this go faster. It's a handy little tool to have on your desk. But if you don't, we can just keep going like this. And so I've got my brown. So you're going to create your puddles, and then you can go through and mix each one up and rinse your brush in between each color once you start mixing that water in. The first thing I do before pretty much, oh, Tori, yeah, great point. A dropper is also perfect because then you don't have to do the back and forth thing. I love that. Great tip. So preparing my palette, like what we're doing right now, this is the first thing I do before every single painting. What it does is it just makes it so that you can start painting and not have to stop in between every single new color. I also find it pretty relaxing to do this. It's kind of, it can be a little tedious, but it's also kind of just like soothing. So it's a nice way to start your painting process. All right, so I've got my yellow, orange. Another thing that's going to be handy to have nearby is a little tray or bowl or cup, anything that can hold a little bit of paint. I'm actually just going to be using the lid of my paint palette to mix your colors outside of your palette. So if you need to step away to get that real quick, go right ahead. I don't know if anyone is using tube paint today. Tube paint is actually what I use the most. And with watercolor, you can get it in tubes. It's just very concentrated. And you squirt it out just, like you would with acrylic or something. But it works pretty much the same. The nice thing is you can actually kind of create your own palette with tubes, because you can fill an empty palette with those colors that you choose, which is kind of fun. But the first, I think, 2 years of my painting practice was all with a pan set. So these are great as well. Okay. So I know we might all go at different paces here with our mixing. I'm going to go ahead and start talking through the different combinations. So just go at your own pace, and we'll all kind of reach the same point here in a few minutes. But okay, the first thing I want to mix up is a nice neutral green. This is a green I use all the time, and it's kind of a grayish green, and it's just lovely. So what you can do to get this color is to mix your green. I'm going to load it up on my brush here and move it to my mixing area, which my palette actually has 2 mixing areas. So I'm going to start there. I'm moving the green over to that. And, it doesn't have to be a ton, but enough to work with for a little while. Okay, so there's my green. I'm going to rinse my brush. And now I'm going to get a little purple. Purple mixed with green. It's a very lovely combination. Start with just a little bit of purple and see how it looks. Whenever I'm mixing color, I kind of do it in stages until I get to the color that I like. So what you can do, if you have room on your little practice page here, is actually just test out your color. So I don't know if you can tell on the screen, but what this has already done is made my green quite a bit darker and a little more gray. So this was the green that I started with, and now with a touch of purple, it's this nice kind of dark foresty color. And actually, I'm happy with that. So I'm going to keep it at that blend that I have. So that was kind of like probably 3-to-1 ratio of green to purple for me. But test it out and see what you get. All right. While we've got our purple going, let's mix up a nice warm purple. So now I've actually started this color in my little lid of my tray here. So I'm going to add a little more to it, taking purple from my palette over to my mixing area. So this time purple is going to be the main color. And to the purple, we're going to add a touch of orange. So again, I'm going to start with just a little bit and see how that looks. And test it out on my page. So yeah, I think I'm going to stick with that. It really doesn't take much of a second color to impact that first color. So just so you can see the comparison, I'll show you the purple that's straight out of my palette. So this purple this is the one I mixed, and then this is the one straight out of my palette. And it's lovely, but it's very bright. This is almost more like a maroon now, and I like that for an autumn palette. So there's our purple. Now, the one thing that is important to know is that the hue of color that you're using will, of course, impact the final result here. You know, we're all going to have kind of slightly different versions of green and purple and so on. So you might have to adjust your ratios a little bit depending on your own paint, but hopefully you'll still get some good results with your paint as well. All right, we are going to now do a nice warm yellow. So this can be beautiful for wheat or, you know, anything like that. So I'm going to start with my yellow here straight out of the palette. Yellow will be the main base color that I'll move over to my mixing area. Few blobs of the yellow, and now I'm going to add just a tiny touch of brown to the yellow and a touch of orange. And yellow is a light color, so what might happen is you might need to add even more yellow, but let's see where this is. Okay. Testing it out here. So I'm really liking this color. It's actually kind of a mustard, which is pretty. And I might keep it at that, because what I can always do is lighten the color using water. So keeping it a little bit darker is nice, and then you can just add water to it to make it lighter. So anyway, there we have our nice autumny colors. I'll give everyone a minute or two to get your colors all mixed.
Leana, what's your favorite part? What do you love about watercolor as we're kind of
Oh,
waiting?
yeah. Oh man, that's a hard question. You know, watercolor to me it's just so beautiful because of how it moves on the paper. The water, the way it works is the water basically is carrying the pigment across the surface of your page. And so it's just unlike any other paint because of the movement that you can get with it. But you can also get such amazing precision and detail. So it has this wide range that I think is just gorgeous. You know, you can do those really scientific, like detailed paintings, but also loose, abstract, gorgeous, you know, beautiful paintings. So anyway, that's a great question, Nicole. watercolor, it's just one of those things that as soon as I learned it, it just was like, this is my thing. This is it. I think we all have our mediums that kind of resonate with us. And for me, I still am just in love with watercolor. So,
And you can tell because the work that you create, I mean, and watching and looking even at the
oh,
screen, it's magical. It's really wonderful.
well, thank you so much. It's so interesting, once you start to learn a skill, you get better, of course, as you go, but it's almost like the farther you go, the more you realize you have to learn. And so it's kind of like just endlessly fascinating to me what's possible with watercolor. And I've been doing it now for almost 10 years, but it's like, it is not old to me. So anyway, that's why I love teaching it, because, it can be this hobby or skill that you can carry with you forever. So anyway, yeah, thanks for that
That's
question.
great. Thank
That's
you.
a fun one. All right, guys. Well, no matter where you're at, let's go ahead and just keep practicing. You can keep tweaking your palette as we go here. But what I want to do before we really switch gears is to show you how you can use a smaller brush to do these same leaf effects that we've been practicing. So if you have a smaller brush handy, go ahead and grab that. We won't spend too much time on this because, yeah, it's pretty much the same idea, just with a smaller brush. But for your place cards specifically, you're probably going to want to be comfortable with a smaller brush just because of the scale of the paper that you'll be working on. So let's practice a little blade of wheat, because I think that can be a lovely motif to add to a place card. So what I'm going to do first, the first thing I always do when I get a brush ready is I dip it in water, because if it's dry, you're going to want to get those fibers nice and wet, those bristles, and just wipe it off. All right, so I'm going to use my lovely mustardy yellow here for this one and mix up that brush in the paint just like we've been doing. And I am going to wipe that off pretty well. So we've got a nice pointy little brush here. This is a number 1, but anything from like 1 to 4 size, April, that will be perfect. Yeah, great question. It's still a round brush like what we've been using, just smaller. All right, so I know this is going to be tiny on your screen, but I'll hold it up as well. Let's do a little blade of wheat. So what I'm going to do first is draw the stem. And with a smaller brush, you're going to find you need to load it up more often. So you might even have to load it up between, every stroke or every other stroke. So once you've got the stem drawn, now we can do the little grains. That's what they're called, grains. Okay, so I'm going to start with the top one, and I'm doing that little stroke we've been practicing. Light touch, press down and pull. And now on the other side, I'll do kind of a row, and now I'll hold it up for you. Okay. Sorry if it gets a little blurry there. Light touch and press. And so with a smaller brush, the nice thing is you can really get precise with your strokes, but it's the same exact technique, just on a smaller scale. So once you've done one, let's go ahead and do one more. I'm gonna move some of this stuff here. Okay, and with this one, let's do one that actually kind of crosses over that first one. So I'm going to draw the stem and just do a simple little cross over there at the bottom. And now I can do the same thing. So the fun thing, once you get comfortable with a technique and a pattern, is that you can start to repeat it and to layer it. And when you do that, it can create some really beautiful, more complex effects. So just by, layering these two blades of wheat, we start to get more of a design motif going. So I'm doing the exact same thing. And there we have a sweet little thing there. You could even, if you want to be really cute, you could get a little brown and put like a little string around the bottom that comes off. So it's really just a matter of layering these techniques to create your designs. Okay, so that's a fun one. And we'll probably play with more little combinations like this in a little while. But what I want to show you next is a different technique. Oh, hold it up closer. Sure. Yeah. And this one is it's a little more versatile. It allows you to create shapes of all different sizes. So we can do larger leaves, we can do pumpkins, all sorts of things. So you might still have room on your practice page, and if so, just stick with that. I'm going to keep working on this one for a minute or two. The thing that will be helpful to start with this next exercise, if you have it, is a little pencil. Even better is a watercolor pencil, but if you just have a regular pencil, that's great too. The nice thing with a pencil is that you can create outlines of your shape before committing to it with your paint. So this is actually a watercolor pencil, and I use this almost with every painting. What it does is I can create a beautiful sketch to lay out my composition, but because it's a watercolor pencil, it actually dissolves as I paint. So then I have no pencil lines, which is really nice. But you can do this with a regular pencil as well. The first shape we're going to practice on is just a simple leaf, but more of a larger leaf. And so I'm going to draw this darker than I normally would so you can see it. But on your paper, use a very light stroke with this. Okay, so here's our little leaf. Just a very simple kind of oval, pointy oval leaf. And again, this is a lot darker than I would normally do. You want to go about as light as you can, but still see it. So that's for your reference, what you're going to do. And so now what I can do is just fill in this shape with our color. And I'm actually going to use this mustardy color again. And because I drew this fairly large, I'm actually going to switch back to this number 6 brush. But you could also practice on a smaller version of this if you want to stick with your small brush. Okay, so I'm going to dip that brush in my clear water, wipe it off a couple times. And now I'm going to swirl it into my yellow. And I only need to wipe it once or twice because we're filling a pretty large area here. So to fill this leaf, I'm going to start on one side, and I might have to load my brush up a few times. And then when I get towards the middle, I'm going to draw kind of a hard line on the edge there, and then come on the other side and leave it white in the middle so that it creates kind of like a vein of the leaf. So this is sort of a stylized way to do a leaf, but it's really effective because it reads as a little simple vein. So then I can draw my stem coming down. And of course, you can do this at any scale that you want. So it can be really fun to do these, you know, to layer these, you know, do one and then do a bunch of them all together. But that's a fun, simple one. And I think we need to do a pumpkin because it is fall still. I know we're still in Christmas mode. We're in Christmas mode too, but a simple little pumpkin. So we're going to do the same technique here. And to draw a pumpkin, I like to start with just drawing a little dot that represents the top of the middle. And then I'm going to do a curved line that comes around. Okay, Jacqueline, finding brushes not pointy. Interesting. Okay, so sometimes the type of brush you have, each brush has kind of a range of how pointy it can get. Some can get very pointy, like the one I'm using. And then others, like I have this brush here, it's also a round number 6 brush, but it is actually quite a bit softer, meaning the bristles they're just softer than this one I'm using here. And it's great for filling in areas, but it's not as good for the detailed precision. So what might be your issue is that you have a softer brush. Yeah, and I know that's a little frustrating. Just do your best with it. And sometimes, ironically, the cheaper brushes, like this is a sable brush right here. It's one of the fancy ones. This is like my $4 synthetic brush, but it does hold a really nice point. So you start to learn over time kind of the types of brushes for different things, but yeah, that might be your issue. All right, so keep going with my pumpkin here. And there it is. And so I'm going to show you how on this one you can get a little bit of a shading effect going on. So we're going to start the same way. And I'm going to use just my orange straight out of the palette. But if you need to add a little more water to your orange, go ahead. So swirling that brush in really well, and then wiping it a couple times. Okay, so as I fill this in, I'm going to start on one side of the pumpkin. And work my way around. Until I get to about 2/3 of the way over. So there's where I've stopped. Now what I'm going to do is rinse my brush and get clear water. Going to wipe the water off a couple times. And now I can overlap my water on the brush. So this is just a clear brush. I'm overlapping it on that color. And now I can keep filling it in and it will create a little bit of a lighter orange. and it just gives it more of a rounded look. So this is essentially creating a very simple little gradient within a shape just by using water to transition that color. So that is of course optional, just if you want to get a little bit fancier with your technique there. Okay, so with the pumpkin, we're going to let that one dry fully before we add the stem or any other details, because what happens with watercolor is if you touch wet paint to wet paint, it will blend together. So we don't want to add that brown stem to the orange, or we'll get kind of a weird blobby brownie orange. So we're going to hold off on that for now. All right, so we've got about half an hour left, and I want to take some time to actually practice some designs for our place cards. Okay, so I actually did a Google search to see if watercolor place cards exist, and I could not find any to save my life, but I'm going to show you how I make them myself, and it's really easy. Like these ones here, I made this morning and straight out of this watercolor paper. So feel free to keep practicing if you want. I'm going to just walk through this really quickly, and you don't have to do this step right now. This is just later on when you're ready to do your place cards, you'll know what to do. But basically, I'm just going to use my ruler here and create some lines on my watercolor paper. And so you can of course make these any size you want. I'm going to keep it simple and do like 4 inches. They're going to be like 2 inches by 3 inches when they're folded. So I'm sure you know how to measure things. I'm just going to do this really quickly. So this shows me where the center line is and where the cut line is. Okay, so I'm going to just draw out my little grid here. And this is what I would do. So if I were starting my place cards, I would do this first. I would kind of lay out my grid, and then I could work flat before I cut out the place cards. So here's my grid this way, and now I'll go 3 inches this way. Okay. There's that, and there's that. All right, so out of this one page, I can actually get 9 different place cards. And now I'm going to go ahead and pre-score these so that they fold really easily. And to do that, I'm just using a little X-Acto knife. I've measured the halfway point of the place cards, so I'm just going to really lightly score them with my knife at the halfway point. And now I can paint on these while it's nice and flat, and it'll fold nicely once I'm ready to make them. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, I think. And then what you get at the end, you know, once you start to cut it out, actually, I'm going to grab my scissors here. Then you can either X-Acto or just scissor these out, and you have your little place card. So the way I created these was the same. I just painted it all flat, and then I did my cutting and folding. So I want us to just take a little time here, and I'll instruct a little bit, but I also want you to have some time to practice your own designs for your place card. So I'll show you some of the ones that I came up with using our techniques that we learned today. I'm going to bring this a little closer. There we go. But yeah, this is kind of your creative time to take what we learned and practice your own motifs. I really love the effect of just like a simple sprig on a place card. It really, I don't think you need much more than that, but you can get as elaborate as you want. For example, on this one, I started to layer some leaves at the top edge. And so when I fold it, what we get is kind of a nice border there. So this is just layering the same simple leaf, but in 2 different colors. So that can be a fun one to try. All right, so I'm just going to cut out a few of these here and we'll practice some. Okay, so on your paper, you're not going to worry about making the place card yet. You're just going to start coming up with your little designs to put on it later. Okay, so I'm going to actually play with my purple. We haven't used our purple yet, but it can be a really lovely one to try with your leaf technique. It's a nice dark color, so it really pops on your place card. So I am just going to kind of go around the border, I think, on this one. So I just want to show you how you can repeat this leaf over and over and create really nice designs. So here we go. I'm using my small brush now, and I can just start going around the edge and do as many of these as I want. You know, one fun thing you can also do, this is not for a place card, but you can you could create little wreaths with this technique. If you were to draw a circle as your base, maybe just lightly with pencil, you could go around it with these leaves and, you know, use different colors. It's really lovely on a leaf. Oh, we've got a little furry friend joining us. I love it. I love it. So I'm really just kind of repeating this one. You know, it's really up to you. I think you could, of course, make them all the same. Depending on how many people you have, you might want to just do the same design for everyone. But it could be really fun to mix and match. But that's why creating a palette to start with is helpful. And maybe having only 3 or 4 colors that you use, it will immediately coordinate. They'll all work together if you're using the same colors. So just going to do one on this side. And so that's just a fun border, very simple. And if I wanted to add a pop of color to this one, I could maybe think about adding some simple little berries or something like that. So for example, I could get my yellow and just do tiny little dots or like scattered around yellow and purple is a really nice combination. By the way, they're complementary colors, so they work really well together. So these little dots just add kind of a nice detail and pop of color. Of course, holding this up, I'm not quite as precise. There we go. And then there you go. You can write your name in the middle. So the writing part, that's the part that I struggle with. I am not a calligrapher, but we'll give it a try. We'll at least do my name. That one I can sort of do. But there's a place card. So once you start to get the hang of it, you know, these really can go pretty quickly. Now that I see this, I think I'm going to do a bottom one as well. And, you know, don't worry if these aren't perfect. I think that's part of the beauty of it, is that it's hand painted. And that is just a beautiful gift to people, is to take time like this to, you know, really celebrate them and add this handmade element to your table. No one's going to be judging how it looks, you know, they're going to be like amazed that you painted this. So that's just to encourage you. If it doesn't turn out perfect, that is actually a good thing. You can go to Hobby Lobby and get perfect ones.
But I agree, that's what makes it so special, and your guests will likely keep these forever.
Yeah. It's also like a keepsake. Yep. So true, Nicole. So there's a simple one. One thing I just remembered I wanted to show you was how you can actually make a very simple flower using this technique as well. So keep practicing, but feel free to watch if you want to. I'm going to set that one to the side. Let's see, I'll do one on this. So again, this little stroke, it can do so much, but you could create, for example, a little sunflower on your place card with this technique. And the only difference is you're going to rotate the stroke around a center point instead of doing it more in a line. So for a little sunflower, I'm starting with a dot in the center, and then I'm doing my little stroke around that center point. So you can see I'm actually rotating my paper as I go. And it's that same stroke repeated over and over. And then once this dries, we can do the center of that little flower. And it's a sweet little sunflower. And while that's drying, I could go in now maybe with my nice autumn green. And create maybe some bigger leaves that come out on either side of it. Kind of like the bigger leaf we practiced, where I leave the white opening in the middle. There's one. So that's a fun one. And then when the yellow is dry, we can take our brown and create that nice dark center of the flower. So there's a fun little sunflower using the same technique. And speaking of brown, I forgot to show you the rest of the pumpkin. We'll give him a little stem at the top. I don't know about you, but my desk is getting very full. Let's see. All right, Lisa. Can you show us some ideas? Oh, with a flat brush. That's fun. Sure. Yeah, I'll show you the stem real quick and then we can look at a flat brush. Okay. So here's our little pumpkin stem. It's just a little thinner at the top and it gets thicker at the bottom. And then you could keep it just like this, or you could add some lines to the pumpkin. And I'm going to just take a little bit of orange here. And I'm going to, let's see, I'll mix it in here. And I'm going to add a tiny bit of brown to it to make it a little darker. And wipe that brush off. And then I can do my thin line technique to add some lines to the pumpkin. Very simple. Okay. All right, so Lisa, yeah, I love that question. Let's find a flat brush here. I will be honest, I don't use a flat brush very often for botanical techniques, but I'll show you a few of the things you can do with it. Here we have, this is a 1/4 inch flat brush. And I also have an 1/8 inch flat brush. And so they're the same thing, just one is a little smaller. One thing that can be really cute to do is to create like a little planter pot with a flat brush. So for example, we could do maybe our orange and brown combo here. I'm mixing, so this is my flat brush, mixing that up really well, wiping it off a little bit. And now I can, because it has the flat edge to it, I can easily create kind of, I'm doing like a diagonal line, and then I can come across and down. And this can create a really simple, cute little terracotta pot easily. And then you could use your leaf technique to make a sweet little plant coming out of it. So this, what isn't necessarily fall themed, but it could be a really cute thing to add. Let's see, like a little succulent kind of thing. So it can be fun to blend like a botanical with a pot or something like that. So that's one idea. Let's see. You can use, we're just going to experiment here a little bit. You can use a flat brush to do leaves as well. And they're just a little bit more angled. So here's my 1/8 inch flat brush. And I'm getting it into my green mix, wiping that off. And let's see, go to this part of my paper. So what I can do here is start with the flat edge of that brush and then press down and kind of do the same technique as the round brush. And this can make some nice leaf shapes as well. So it's definitely fun to experiment with different types of brushes. You can kind of bend these leaves a little bit more. You know, you could kind of like angle it over and come down, come over. So it's the same idea of like pressing lightly and then hard and then lightly. But yeah, these can be really fun for leaves too. Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, I love how a practice page starts to look. It's just filled up with all these fun things. This is literally how I practice too, you guys. I have just like pages of random things and I'm just trying out different brushes and brush strokes. This is how I always practice before I start my final piece. So letting yourself just play and have fun and not worry about what it looks like is really the key to learning, honestly, to learning how things work. Because when you try something and it flops, then you learn to not do that again. It's like, oh, so when I do this, like I wasn't being careful here and I actually like touched, like I've moved the wet paint into my little pot here. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to show you how to fix a mistake. If you get a little blob like this, it's a little harder when it's over top of a painted area, but you can take actually a flat brush, it's good for this, clear water, and just sort of rub it on that area that got the mistake on it. It's going to lift up some of the paint, but that's okay because you can go back over top later, but it did remove that green. So when that dries, I can go back over it with my brown and you'll never know that it happened. So there are some little tricks of the trade that can fix mistakes. So, all right.
Do you keep
yeah.
a lot of your practice papers somewhere as more of like, to see how far you've come, from where you were in the beginning to now?
Yeah, I have, when I moved, honestly, I threw a lot of that away. But yeah, I do keep scraps and then I'll flip it over and use the back. I kind of just keep it for once it fills up, unless I usually do toss it at this point, but it's fun to see the progress. Definitely. Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So let's see, Lisa, I'm trying to think of other motifs you could do with the flat brush. I think it's kind of similar. It's just a slightly different look for a leaf shape. I don't know. Are there any requests for little things to to try? I'd love to see some of the ones that you're practicing, if anyone wants to share. I know it can be scary. How would you do a wreath? Good question. Yeah, let's do a wreath. Okay. I am going to move these out of the way and I'll do one right on this paper here. If I were going to do a wreath, I would start with a pencil. And honestly, I would also have, let me grab something here. depending on the size of your wreath, you can grab something that's round and trace it. So this is just a spool of thread, and I'm going to trace this with my pencil. And now that gives me a nice guideline for my wreath. So with a wreath, especially if I'm going to be using different colors, I always start with the lightest color and work darker. So I will start, I think I'm going to start with this yellow here. And I usually do, let's see, I'll kind of work in sections. So I'll start with this one side with my little leaves here. And of course, you can experiment with the size of your leaves. You could do little tiny ones. You could not press down quite as hard and do thinner, more like pine needle kind of leaves. But I'll do usually a few that are one color and go around. And all of that same color, and then I'll switch to a darker color. So there's that. And now I could go to my green. And with this one, what I might do is more like thinner leaves. So kind of barely pressing down just to give it some contrast. And you can, of course, overlap a little bit if you want to. You can show some leaves that kind of come in between the yellow leaves. But it's really, of course, up to you what colors and types of leaves you choose. But it's fun because once as soon as you just start repeating an element, it really starts to look detailed and complex. So there's a nice base for a wreath. And now I could maybe grab like an orange and do some little berries that are interspersed. And of course, you could add little flower elements in here. You can make it as complex or as simple as you want, but that's a very, very quick little wreath. And if you were to do this bigger, like on a greeting card or something, you would just start with a bigger circle, and you would use probably like your number 6 brush to go bigger with your brush so that the scale could go larger. Yeah. Great question, April. Okay, guys, we've got about 5 more minutes. Are there any other questions before we wrap up? Yeah, Shelly.
Hello. So April,
Hi.
who just asked her question, is my sister-in-law,
Oh,
my brother's
fun.
wife. Yeah. And she actually has her own watercolor selling company. So I don't know if she could maybe speak
Oh my
to that.
gosh.
Yeah.
Hi
That's
there.
amazing.
I have loved this workshop. Thank you so much.
Oh, April, I'm so glad. I would love to see your work sometime.
Thank you.
You should
just
put
was
it in the
doing
chat.
the,
What's
um,
that?
I was doing the wreath. I don't know. I'm not seeing myself,
Lovely.
but
You're
um,
there.
Yeah.
Shelly mentioned the watercolor company that I have. My company is called A Little Creative, and I import watercolors from Poland.
Oh, wow.
And I just have really enjoyed it. And Shelley did ask permission before, I don't want to be a big
Oh,
salesman or whatever, but I did create, I have loved this workshop so much. So I did create a coupon code if anybody wants to order from my shop today.
awesome.
So I can
Oh,
put that in the chat.
yeah. Could you put that in the chat for us?
I sure will. I sure will.
Perfect.
If anybody has any questions, I've been painting with watercolor for quite a few years. But I love helping people get started because I'm so passionate about it myself. And sometimes that means that, people order from me, and sometimes I encourage people, to order somewhere else. So it's not a
Yes.
big sales, thing. It's more about just sharing the love for this medium. So if anybody has any questions, I would encourage them to reach out to me on Etsy.
And she
Oh,
and my
that's
brother
awesome.
and my nephew also have a love for the people in Poland and have gone over there several times, and also people in Belarus and Ukraine as well. So I just kind of want to put that
Oh,
out there
wow.
too.
There is such talent in that part of the
Supportive.
world.
Yeah.
It's
You are
yeah.
right. Yeah,
Some
it's
of the
amazing.
best watercolors in the world are from that area. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's actually how I got
April.
started on this in this business. Was I was on vacation and I stopped at an art supply store and just picked up a few little watercolor cubes, little pans, and
Yes.
loved them so much and realized I couldn't get them here. So that's how I started this business.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Sometimes it can be just the smallest thing that starts us off on something.
Right.
And that's amazing. I love hearing how people get started, and yeah, that is amazing. I can't wait to check that out.
Sure. And please, if
Yeah.
anybody has any questions, feel free. This has been a wonderful, you've just done a great job with making this accessible to so many. I
Oh,
really appreciate it.
well, and thanks to Modern Prairie for hosting this for us. I just think this community is so wonderful, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. And I just love hearing what others are doing. So yeah,
I agree.
I'm sure
I
this
agree.
group is filled with talent.
Absolutely. April, we'll have to check out the website ourselves, and we'll have to kind of, we can reach out potentially. Maybe there's something there longer term, but we'd love to
I
see
would
what you're
love that.
doing.
I would love that. Any questions you have for collaboration would be wonderful. Thanks.
Perfect. Great.
I love it.
Two more questions, Lana, before we hang up. Jacqueline
Okay.
asked the best, she asked, there's three really, best brushes to start with.
Okay, so I have a few suggestions. This one I've been using today. The brand is called Simply Simmons. You can get it on Amazon and Blick. They have pretty much every size and type that you want. They're very affordable and they're great. They're synthetic, but yeah, they're very versatile and affordable. I would recommend that brand.
You know what
What
we can do actually, Leanna?
What?
You and I could take this offline and we can send a group email with some of these recommendations. Let's do that. That might be
Even
easier.
better. I
Okay.
have like a whole list I could send. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
that's
Thank
perfect.
you.
So we'll do
Yes.
that. And then the
Yes.
next was, do you ever trim loose fiber off your brushes?
Oh, I have. I try not to because it's so easy to kind of mess it up. But if it's very loose, I either pull it out or trim it. Yeah. There's nothing more annoying than a loose stray bristle. Like a rogue bristle is just so annoying. Yeah.
Ashley asked, total beginner question. Do we just put the lid on the paint pan when we're finished painting?
Ashley, that is a great question. So if you were using the lid to mix with, I would obviously kind of wipe that out. But what I'll usually do is actually let the paints air dry for a little bit and then put the lid on. But you can, if you're not going to be using them for a while, they could get a little moldy if you keep the lid on while they're wet. So yeah, great question.
And lastly, Wanda asked if this will be shared, and the answer is yes. So what we will do is we'll
Yes.
curate the recording and we'll publish it on our YouTube channel. So you'll have access to it afterwards. So even on the
Perfect.
site as well, you could give us a day or two, but you can then download the link or go right to YouTube to see it if you're interested. But we can absolutely share it out. And April, what we'll also do for you, when we do the email for everyone who, you know, registered for the course, and I know things happen, we'll probably send out a link to your shop as well. So, you know, highlighting everyone. So we will
Thanks.
definitely do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's 2 more messages. Oh, okay, to watch. Yes, yes. Thank you, Leana. You're incredible as always. We're so, and I speak for Melissa and myself, we're so fortunate to have found you in your work and the things that we're doing together. It's incredible. You're incredible. So it's
Well,
nice to
God,
have you
thank you
here.
guys. It's been so fun today. And I really appreciate everyone coming out this morning. And I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Have fun making your place cards. I'm sure, you know, Nicole, it might be fun if there's like a hashtag or something. Like make with modern prayer. I don't know. We could maybe email that out. But if you want to share
Yes.
your final creations, maybe we could share that to the Modern Prairie page.
I completely agree. I think we could do Make It Modern Prairie, but we'll share it out. We would love to see your designs and love to see how you've set your tables. I mean, we really, that's the goal, right? Is that we use what we're creating. It's about the experience. So I love that.
Yeah.
Happy
Absolutely.
Thanksgiving.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Leanna, do you want to stay on for a second?
Yes.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye,
you guys
Carrie.
for coming.
Bye. It was great to see you.
You too. You too.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, April. Oh, man.
Let's see. I can